Welcome to another episode of the Anyone But Cam Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, and I'm your commissioner. My name is Frankie, and sitting across the internet from me is Cam. Cam, how's it going?
It's not too bad, Frankie. Got a lot on my mind for this upcoming week. I'm excited to talk about it.
Yes, but before we get to that week, we will talk about this past week. We'll start off with our waiver discussion. We'll talk a little bit about the buy-in, once again, much to my chagrin. And then we'll talk about my trade from this week. We'll go into our usual weekly rewinds. We'll have a new segment this week as a little preview for next week's Halloween-themed episode. The segment will be called Trick or Treat. We'll see what's going on there. Then we'll get into our matchup of the week and all those other matchups we'll highlight for this coming week. And then we'll do our mailbag. Sound good to you?
I'm excited to get into this waivers, that's for sure.
Yeah. So we had some interesting developments in several different group chats over the past few days. From one, Jake Logan, talking about how he was going to make this an important waivers for some reason, even though it's, as I stated, it's one of the more sparse waivers we've had all season. But he was making a big deal out of securing Mitch Trubisky, and he did that. $54 for Mitch Trubisky, beating out 4 other bidders. I see that neither of us bid on that. $54. What were your thoughts on that?
I was a bit more with the Jacob Pond side of things. He bid $0 on Mitch Trubisky. Don't know exactly what he's expecting there, but $54 for a quarterback that I've been heard called Bortles West is not someone exactly I think I want on my team. It doesn't look well on Jake Logan's preseason decisions that he's dropping Deshaun Watson for him either.
Yeah, that's rough.
A lot of money.
I feel like JP was just calling everyone's bluff with that $0 bid. He's like, none of you actually want him. He's bang, not even $1, 0. That is interesting. You beat Dylan by $1. That's wild. I wonder if he had some kind of intel to allow him. I know they both live in Eugene, so maybe there was something there. I don't know. But I don't get it, man. Yeah. What's more pressing to me is that you outbid me for Tre'Quan Smith, $49 for the chance that Tre'Quan Smith has a serious glow up and becomes the second target for Drew Brees. Why did you think he was worth $49?
Well, I'm already here sitting with the second least amount of fab before these waivers rolled, so I wasn't expecting to be able to save my money for any big ticket items if they come out later in the season anyway. So I might as well spend it now while I can. This week I played Dylan, who has the Vikings against the Saints. And I need someone for my flex spot. And I think it'd be pretty hype if I had 2 Saints going up against his, 2 Vikings. And need him for that.
But did you ever consider that I need him way more than you do?
Well, Frankie, you should have spent more money then. God.
I thought 21 was, no one else bid. So I thought, I considered going up to 30s, but I was like, this is just kind of going on a limb that he becomes a really valuable asset. So I'll say for 21 because I am on the lower end. I think I have I forgot about Logan. I was second least fab in my division, which I was kind of monitoring that a bit. But come on, man. Jermaine Kearse didn't do it for me last week, and I was hoping Tre'Quan would this week. But I guess I might have to look somewhere else.
Yeah, yesterday I was listening to the Fantasy Footballers, which I know a decent amount of people in this league listen to now, and they were talking up Tre'Quan, and I was just upset the entire time because I was like, no, I want him for cheap. But
it was annoying to me too. Yeah, because I was looking into him, and then I put on the episode, and I heard they were talking about him, and I was like, oh, well, there goes Tre'Quan. So I'm like, oh, I'll put in at least 20. I don't think he was going to bid more than that. And then I'm like, oh, I'll put up 21, and then 49, whatever.
One less than 50. That's how I thought.
Yeah. And then only other big takeaway. I guess we have to look at Jake bidding 35 on Baker and ultimately losing out because didn't have enough spots on his roster, I guess. That's probably why he was invalid. So he didn't super load up on the QB market like he said he would, but whatever. The only other bigger headline is that Levi picked up Raheem Mostert. I still don't know how to say his name for $29 in light of all the injuries happening over there in San Francisco. So I think that could be a valuable pickup going forward.
Yeah, no, definitely. Jake Logan spent 15 here, and I feel like running backs obviously a bit more valuable than quarterbacks. So maybe if he's willing to spend up so much for Mitch Trubisky, why not do it for Raheem too? But he got his guy that he really wanted, so good for him. One last thing about waivers, real quick, is that Dylan got outbid many times, and it was pretty funny to watch for both the Patriots and the Steelers defense. And I'm playing him, so suck it, Dylan.
Well, I didn't even put anything on the Steelers defense, just wanted to use priority. But yeah, it is unfortunate. I've been there, Dylan. I've been there. All right, so that was a little waiver discussion, and we'll move on to talk about the buy-in once again. Cam, you talked to me a little bit earlier this week about a potential poll you might want to put up.
This would actually be a poll that the commissioners put up just to be sure that it is officially sanctioned and that there should only be one option for what you can pick, just to make sure no one can bid multiple times. And then I was told that people will honor the results of this poll.
Well, it doesn't make any sense to me why they wouldn't honor the first poll, considering both Justin and I sanctioned it. It doesn't make any sense to me, but whatever.
Do you think we should expect to see that sometime soon, though, Frankie?
I mean, yeah, I can do that. Whatever.
Cool.
I don't know. I'm annoyed. Anyways. Moving on. Let's talk real quick about my trade this week. So I think it was one of the bigger things to happen in our league this week for sure. There is some, unrest earlier in the night earlier this week where a couple different people, including Devin and Jake and Logan, were all like, people trade with me, make trades, whatever. And then I received a trade. Logan and I went back and forth a couple times. He eventually counters me, and we come to the decision of I traded him Kenyon Drake, Larry Fitzgerald, and Marvin Jones for Sony Michel and Philip Lindsay. I am happy with this trade. I'm sad to see Marvin Jones go, even though he wasn't exactly fantastic this season. He's really the wide receiver 3 over there in Detroit. But I don't know, I just like watching him play. I'm not sad to see Kenyon go, because I got a good week out of him this weekend. See you, girl. I'm more sad about losing Larry, if anyone, just because that's my guy. I love Larry. But I'm super excited to have Philip Lindsay on my team. Hopefully Sony comes back in the next couple of weeks with full health. And my running backs, if Bell comes back and receives the workload that he should receive, we'll be looking up. I might even be looking to ship one of these guys out of here pretty soon. But what were your thoughts on the trade?
Yeah, so I feel like a lot of people were kind of confused when this trade happened. It came almost out of the blue because it was pretty early in the trade talks, it seemed like. And it seems like Logan probably, based on people's reactions, could have tried to get a bit more out of Sony Michel and other players on his team because a lot of people were confused and like, I totally would have offered more. But, he decided to go down and just get the trade done. And like you said, he got Marvin Jones, who's really the wide receiver 3 on Detroit, and Larry Fitzgerald, who could improve with the new offensive coordinator in Arizona, but definitely hasn't been a solid asset to a team. So it's almost like he was just valuing the names without really thinking about it and going through the trade deal.
Yeah.
But Kenyon Drake, he's scored pretty well 2 of the last 3 weeks, so maybe Logan just thinks he can keep repeating that production. And if he can, I still honestly don't really know why he would do this trade, because it's not going to be as good as Sony Michel would be when he gets back, and Logan still has Isaiah Correll, Alex Collins, Royce Freeman on his roster who are, I don't know, about as good as Kenyon Drake. It's just
Yeah.
confusing.
Yeah, it's a little bewildering to me, which is why I accepted it immediately.
Yeah, and
um,
one more thing.
yeah.
Logan, his team name is currently Depth. He's very confident in the players he has on his bench. So I don't know why he'd do a 2-for-3 trade where he just gains more depth but doesn't improve his starting lineup as much.
Yeah. Alrighty. So let's move on now to our weekly rewinds. And we'll start with our matchup of the week, Greg versus JP. Wow, we picked a good one, didn't we? A 37-point blowout, as it would end up being. Rest in peace, Marshawn Lynch. The injuries continue to pile up for Greg and the running back side. Just looking over Greg's team, down week for Tyler Boyd, who I spoke really highly of the last few weeks, thinking of him being a really great asset. But it was just a weird game overall. I watched the first half of that Cincy game, well, the first 3 quarters, and it was just very weird. Like Andy Dalton, as we'll talk later, just couldn't get in the groove, and he just kind of hyper targeted AJ with 14 targets, and everyone else just kind of got the scraps. And then other thing to know about Greg's team is they did pick up Peyton Barber off waivers this week to help up his running back situation, but he is dealing with an injury as well. But he does have Jalen Richard now that beast mode is gone, so I think he can be a pretty startable asset. Maybe not so much for Nyheim Hines, but looking more over to JP's side, we could have very easily ended up winning the Ben McAdoo Award this week.
I'm not asking, and I haven't heard a thing.
For starting Rob Gronkowski, who it was pretty clear he wasn't going to play, but he won the game anyways, so whatever. Lamar Miller had a good game this week. First week, he's had a good game since week 3, really, and this is his best week of the season. Against the Jacksonville defense, which is the 3rd week in a row now, it's just really stumbling. That's something to keep in mind going forward, especially you can see it in fantasy as well. 4 points this week, -2 the week before, 2 the week before. And then only other thing to note on JP's team is that Emmanuel Sanders flashed, but there's been a lot of talks about him and Demaryius Thomas being traded before the deadline coming up soon. So and because Sanders is cheaper, and I think at least at this point in their careers the better player, I think it's definitely within the realm of possibility. So he gets traded. And to where, who knows, that could drastically change his value for JP going forward.
Yeah, I mean, Jake kind of coasted by this week playing against Greg, but he's got some things that are looking up for his team. With Sony Michel getting injured, it's just going to make the Pats have to throw the ball more and more, which is just definitely good for JP's team for sure. But Greg, on the other hand, definitely a rough week. He had a lot of players waiting for him on Sunday night and Monday night, so we weren't really sure where his week was going. But by the end of Monday Night Football, Greg was just happy that he broke 60 points. It's a week to forget for him, for sure.
Yeah, this was the worst performance from any owner this year at 61.66. Greg, fun fact, also had the worst week last year of any team with 54.2, so he hasn't gotten that bad yet, but it's something to monitor going forward, I think.
Poor Greg.
Alrighty, move on here to talk about Dylan versus Tyler, our highest scoring matchup of the week. Dylan coming away with the victory, retaining the Try Hard Chalice and his perfect record. Some interesting things to pull from his side. Deion Lewis had a good game. This was a weird London game. I watched a little bit of that. But, I mean, the whole Tennessee offense is just so odd. I mean, I guess it makes sense that the running game is picking up for Mariota and is like basically failing passing game, but I do think that is Deion, who's had a very up and down year, could be valuable, but not super sure. Has the bye next week, so we won't find out for a little bit. Other notes on Dylan's side is that Thielen continues to dominate. Yeah, no surprise there, but the question for me really is, I didn't get to watch this game, but 10 targets for Adam Thielen, and we're looking at 14 for Stephon Diggs, and so the targets are still there for Stephon. It's not like they're being all taken by Thielen, but his production is nowhere near where it needs to be, or where it can be, and so I'm interested to see if this slump for Diggs continues. Second week in a row under 7 points. They do have New Orleans this week, which we'll talk about soon, so that could be a good thing for them. Only other note for Dylan is that Kittle gets his second touchdown of the year, but even with the overall low touchdown amount, he is one of the better tight ends in the league, so that's really great for him. On Tyler's side, I've talked about it every week I think this season, but James White is crazy, especially in PPR, and with the injury to Sony Michel, I can definitely see him continuing this kind of domination. Yeldon produced this week, but it'll be interesting to see what happens when Hyde comes to town. I think probably he'll cut into TJ Yeldon's production for sure, and I'm not sure if any of them are going to be super startable going forward. And then I guess the only other big takeaway here is Nick Chubb for 14 points. All right. Maybe we were wrong. Way back when we were talking about the draft about overvaluing Nick Chubb. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, it was a rough week for Tyler, scoring the second most points in the week, but still coming out with a loss.
Yeah.
And it's super unfortunate because if he did make the best start-sit decisions, he could have won this game if he started Nick Chubb and Njoku over Ebron and Callaway. It's a rough loss for him. But
Yeah.
I think he's got some things to look forward to. He didn't have Antonio Brown for this game and still scored this many points. And if Chubb can keep up that production, he can probably replace Yeldon and keep that running back core afloat. Yeah, it's a good week for him, even though he lost.
Yeah, very much so. Alrighty, let's move on now to Jake versus Justin. Justin pulls out a win over Jake. Jake's team, once an alpha, now very much a soy boy beta, as he stated himself with his new team name, which I appreciate very much. Some takeaways from Jake's side. Zeke gets shut down by that Washington defense, which has been sneaky good. I think it's maybe an underrated storyline so far this season. Maybe not, but that Redskins defense is nothing to mess with. Another thing with Zeke, that he's shut down this week, has the bye next week, then has Tennessee, which has also been a top third defense against the run, then Philly after that. It's you might be in for a couple rough weeks for Jake in terms of the running back position. Also for Jake, Sterling Shepard has a good game, which I'm pretty sure we talked about last week. It was very likely going to happen. And he didn't even score a touchdown, which is really good to see for Jake, not being as dependent on that. And only other takeaway from Jake's team is that Corey Davis is droppable. So, sorry, Jake.
But his college highlights, Frankie.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah, Isaiah Crowell had really good college highlights too. I learned that last season. Looking over to Justin's side, Latavius Murray does really well. Another week in a row, over 21 points with Dalvin Cook out of the lineup. That Vikings offense is just really prolific. Talking about the Giants receivers again, OBJ continues this hot 1 week, cold 1 week streak with 24.2 points. His fourth 100-yard receiving game. That just kind of shows what he can do if he has the opportunity. And then another note here is that Christian McCaffrey continues to go again. I mean, only 11 points this week and 10 the last week, but it was against Philadelphia this last week, Washington the week before, which we just talked about having good run defense. McCaffrey has been subverting my expectations all season. I can definitely see that continuing. However, he does have Baltimore this coming week, which has a very strong defense as well. I still think he's very much a startable player, but I'm not super excited to if I'm Justin.
Yeah, Justin, a lot of people in the surveys have been saying that he's the team that's probably going to improve the most in the next couple of weeks, and he's definitely making those predictions look better with scoring a lot of points and beating an alpha, which used to be an accomplishment before Jake Logan's tarnished our name. And Odell getting 24 points with Eli, even though it's that very much last-second touchdown after the two idiotic quarterback sneaks.
Mm-hmm.
He's still scoring a lot of points, which is impressive. And Elmat, I don't know why Justin decided to start him over T.Y. Hilton, but he knows what he's doing, I guess. Good for him.
Yeah. Alrighty. Moving on to Levi versus Logan. Levi, who gets another crucial win to stay in that playoff race with Rod Lack. Looking over Levi's team, he was absolutely, the big takeaway just looking at this is he was absolutely carried by his receivers this week. Another good week for Cam Newton, who's just been absolutely dominant this whole season. Unfortunate things with the Burita injury. Another thing, I think that this will be something we'll talk about a bit more later as well, but 5.2 points for Mark Ingram coming off of last week's 19.3. Is Mark Ingram touchdown dependent? Because he had 12 carries for 32 yards. Yeah, it's just not what you want to see, again, against the Baltimore defense. Not exactly the best matchup in the world for them. But that is something to look at going forward. Only other thing super here to note, Will Fuller gets 8 targets for 6 receptions, which is the most since week 2, which means to me he could definitely be a starting candidate this week, especially going against that Miami defense. Looking more over towards Logan's side, his second worst week of the entire season. It would have been the worst week of the season if it wasn't for Greg's week. But yeah, it's hard with Sony Michel getting injured, down week for Alex Collins, being forced to start Taylor Gabriel and Albert Wilson, never a position I super want to be in. Which is maybe why we saw quite a bit of turnover this week with this team. But there are some upsides things, such as, we'll talk about a little bit later, but my boy Bilal Powell was so unfortunately put on IR this last night or this morning, which means that Crowell will get a bit of an uptick. He can use that, look forward to that going forward. And yeah, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, but Alex Collins underproduces again, has Carolina this week. Not a great matchup, and then Pittsburgh the week after, which has a much better run defense than they do a pass defense. So those are the things to monitor going forward.
Yeah, Logan's team, Sony Michel got injured super early, which definitely put him in a hole to start his week out, and he just couldn't overcome that. It's unfortunate that his second best player this week, Philip Lindsay, isn't even on his team anymore. There's just not a lot of people that are putting Logan's team over the top right now. Just got to hope that changes.
Yeah. Alrighty. Moving on now to Devin versus Lassie. Lassie, who put up a good fight, but wasn't enough. Devin comes away with another win for the Alphas. On Devin's side, just had solid producers pretty much all around. His Eagles
Philly Dilly
did well for him for the most part, besides for that defense. And then some of the things to look at from his team. We mentioned a little bit earlier, talking about Marvin Jones being the wide receiver 3. The entire Detroit offense was pretty much, at least the passing offense was held in check this week, as we'll see on both sides of the ball here, on both sides of the matchup, with Kenny Galladay and Devin and Golden Tate with Lassie. I think they can definitely both bounce back in the coming weeks. And then the only other thing I super want to talk about with Devin's team is, of course, maybe one of the bigger headlines this week in fantasy is Kerryon Johnson's performance against Miami. 19 carries for 158 yards. Wow, that is impressive.
What a cool guy, He's just great all-around football player, great person. I wonder what team he plays for, though, Kenny Johnson? Never heard of him.
Yeah. And then looking over to Lassie's side, we talked about it last week, but I think I said that Juice needs to have a good week this week. Otherwise, he is, I don't even know if he's startable. And he did. 2.7 points in that unfortunate loss in overtime to Tampa Bay. That was an exciting one to watch. Other big headlines from Lassie's side is that LaShawn McCoy goes out with an injury, a concussion, as it would be, after 2 carries, so it's hard to win a week when that happens to one of your running backs. But Lassie was essentially silent on the waivers this week. Not that there was a super big target item running back wise in our waivers, but I would have liked to see him make some kind of move. I guess he can start Aaron Jones this week, and I thought he was going to be a really valuable asset. Not so much the last 2 weeks before the bye. He's going against the Rams, and that's kind of a toss-up, honestly, of running game wise of how well that defense produces. And then the only other big thing here is that Saquon is amazing. The Giants suck, and their season is over. But I think we can continue to look for good things to happen for Saquon. He does have Washington this week, and then a bye, but then comes back with San Francisco and Tampa Bay. So I think that if Lassie needs to win, and he needs to win now, because he's definitely not out of the playoff race because of his division, but it's going to have to come on the back of Saquon, I think, and I'm just not sure that's enough to really propel the entire team forward.
Yeah, and Lassie's definitely not looking great in the tight end position, having to start Kyle Rudolph, who's really done nothing this season. But maybe with Jared Cook getting Amari Cooper traded, who I guess Lassie also has, that could spark or give a spark to his offense here, with Jared Cook being one of the only remaining decent targets in Oakland. And Amari Cooper, who knows, maybe Dallas can actually use him and he won't drop the ball every time. Could give Lassie some solid production here.
Yeah, I wouldn't count on it from Amari, but...
Yeah,
Alrighty, so let's talk about the last matchup of the week. Our matchup against each other this week. At one point, it was looking like this could be a close one. And then the Saints and the Chiefs started to play football, and it was like, oh, never mind.
Yeah, I was rafting on Sunday, and I think I finished rafting maybe in the middle of the third quarter of the late afternoon games, and I come to check my phone, and we're both projected for 60 or 70 points, and I'm just like, what happened to my team?
Yeah.
It was a rough time. I was driving home in the van, couldn't check my phone, just oh God, am I going to lose to Frankie? This is crazy. But then I saw Sunday Night Football, and all was right with the world.
Yeah. So on my side, a rough week overall for pass catching options. We talked about Marvin Jones earlier. Jermaine Kearse, 0 for 2. Come on.
How much fat did you spend on him again?
I don't want to talk about it. And then I think I'm at the point now where I think it's time to finally part with my boy Ricky Seals. I've benched him in prior weeks, but I did pick up Vance McDonald this week, and I think he might end up being a permanent replacement. So that kind of sad because I like him. But and I mentioned earlier that I traded away Kenyon Drake. I got 16.7 points out of him, and now he's gone. So I honestly couldn't be happier. I also mentioned this earlier, but I think it's official that we can just name my team completely done this season because Bilal Powell is on IR, and I don't know if the morale of the team can come back from his absence. Like I don't know if I have it in me to continue to even manage his team without Bilal Powell. He's been such a vital member, even though he's had literally one good week all season. But yeah, and who knows where Le'Veon Bell is? That's fun news. I love waking up to news every morning about he's not at a meeting. Still not at practice. Still not at practice. It's a really great way to start all of my days. Yeah. And then looking over your sides and takeaways. Hey, Cam, remember preseason and then like a little bit after the draft too, when we were like, dang man, Kareem Hunt's totally gonna bust this season, and he like had a bad week 1, but has been like good, and then this was his best week of the season. Yeah, fun. And then John Brown, watching that bit of that Baltimore game. John Brown was basically Flacco's security blanket all game, 7 for 7 for 134 and a touchdown. Yeah, that's really good. And then I was really happy to see when I was watching Red Zone that you did not start Trey Burton. And I was like, oh man, I really have a chance here. You didn't even start Trey Burton. 23.1 points, which is touchdowns can be misleading, but 11 targets for 9 catches. This week 23 points, last week 10. The bye, but then the week before that over 15. He's looking to be the player that we thought he was preseason. So that's good news for you.
Yeah, it's awesome when he gets more than like 4 targets in a game. And Mitchell Trubisky may suck, but if you just keep throwing it in Trey Burton's direction, he'll make him look good.
Yeah. Do you have any other takeaways about our matchup?
No, not a lot. It was unfortunate seeing Melvin Gordon in the last second be designated that he's not going to play, and that did make me a little nervous in the morning. And then Corey Clement, who I thought would be a decent fill-in, just 2.2 points, piece of trash. Yeah,
Come on, he's a person.
Yeah, he's an eagle.
Alrighty, that was our weekly rewind, and we're going to get into a fun little segment here. Cam, what are we going to do?
All right, so this is what we're calling trick or treat. Basically, I'm going to name you a couple players or things of that nature, and you're going to tell me if you think that they are a trick, meaning that they've been producing recently but it's not going to last, or a treat, meaning that they are a solid player, probably going to be putting up a lot of points rest of season. You ready for that?
Alrighty, I am pumped.
All right, so the first one, we kind of touched on him earlier, but he's emerged recently due to some league trading in the NFL, and that is Nick Chubb. Last week, scored 14 points after Carlos Hyde went gone, and Tyler definitely needs that replacement for Yeldon, so he's hoping that you say treat right now, Frankie.
Trick or treat, Nick Chubb. I will go treat. Yeah, I would go treat. I don't totally buy into the hype of like his with talent or whatever, but opportunity is better than talent, and he absolutely has the opportunity. He might be a trick this week. I don't know if you want to start him against Pittsburgh, and you have Chiefs and the Falcons right after. So yeah, I think I'm definitely going to go Chubb. Rest of the season overall will be a treat for Tyler's team.
So maybe you're thinking not a super nice treat, like just one of those fun-sized Snickers or something, but still a treat.
I mean, sure. Maybe more like a Babe Ruth. I don't know, like a little bit lower class than a Snicker.
Anyways, next, what do you think about Marlon Mack? Put up 30.9 points from Devon's IR slot, coming back from an injury for the Colts starting running back job. What do you think?
Yeah, I think we're gonna have to go. I think we're gonna have to go trick on this one, just because he's putting up these numbers against Buffalo, who are just like hopeless. This is a hopeless organization this season. He could produce well against Oakland this week, but yeah, I don't know. I just feel like you obviously can't expect 30 points a week from this guy, and I mean he could be like a low end running back too, but I think Devin will definitely like basically be forced to start him this week, and I think overall he probably leans more in the trick category than treat.
All right. That's interesting stuff for Devin. Maybe he's got to rethink starting him this week. I don't know.
Yeah, we'll see.
All right, so Frankie, this one might hit a little close to home. But what do you think
Uh-oh.
about Tariq Cohen? He was basically invisible to start the season, but recently just been exploding, putting up double-digit points the last 3 weeks, I think. What do you think about it?
I mean, he's a treat. I don't think there's any way you can call him a trick yet. He's absolutely a treat. I mean, I got him for nothing, and he's eclipsing Jordan Howard's production. And I think he is a treat because he has that PPR floor, which is just like super valuable with all the targets he's getting. I think it was like I think he's had minimum 8 targets the last 3 weeks. Yeah, 8 targets or 8 receptions this week, 7 the week before, and then before the bye, he had 7 as well. So having that PPR floor is just so valuable with all the receptions. I think Tariq Cohen is absolutely a treat.
Yeah, I didn't see beforehand, but he got 12 targets against New England. That's just crazy.
Yeah.
Oh, my. All right. Well, that could help your running back core, especially with the trades and possible Le'Veon Bell that's been going on.
Right.
Next, what are we thinking about Mark Ingram? You know, he had a great first game back to help Levi beat me. Not still salty. But this last week only got 5.2 points. What are you thinking?
This one's harder because he had to give up some draft capital, and he's kept him, in his IR spot this whole season, essentially. But, man, yeah, this is probably the one I'm the most on the fence about. Not that I don't think Mark Ingram is good and can be really good, but to qualify as a treat, I'm not sure I can give it to him. But he's not a trick either, necessarily. I'm going to call Mark Ingram a treat because I feel like this week is going to end up being more of an outlier than a pattern. He may end up being a bit more touchdown dependent, but I believe in the Saints offense to get him to the goal line. We talked a bit earlier about, this was, you have to remember this was the Baltimore run defense, which is one of the better ones in the league. So I think rest of the season he will be a treat.
All right, just not as much of a treat as Alvin Kamara. Let's all hope. All right, final question for you. Trick or treat on Jake Logan's team? These last 2 weeks, he's only scored around 83 points, and he's lost the last 3 weeks, fallen to the bottom of the alphas after a hot start. The soy boy beta cuck, what do you think?
Oh, Jake, my man. I don't know what happened, dude. Man, it's hard. We talked a bit earlier about the potential slump that Zeke could be going through. Talked about Corey Davis being almost invisible with that Titans offense. I'm looking at his team this week. He's basically forced to start Mike Davis, which is unfortunate. It does have AD. Mike Evans, Robert Woods. Man, he needs that healthy Cooper Kupp. I feel like if he can get a healthy Cooper Kupp, that could really change everything. But for the meantime, Jake, I'm sorry, your team is a trick. We thought you were an alpha, but you really are a soy boy beta cuck.
Poor guy. What a fall from grace. But no love lost for any alphas. There can only be one.
Yeah.
All right. That was Trick or Treat. Thanks for playing, Frankie.
Yeah, thank you. We will continue with some Halloween stuff next week. You can all look out for a Halloween-themed episode coming to your podcast services soon. Alrighty, now let's go into our matchup of the week. We're going to highlight 3 different matches this week. We'll start off, of course, with the one matchup of the week. And Cam, you picked the matchup of the week this week. Why don't you lead us off?
Yeah, so the matchup I picked for this week was Tyler Walker versus Levi. There's a lot of implications to this game as they're both either like second or third fiddle in their division right now, looking to step up and be a real contender here. So whoever wins this game definitely looking super good for getting in the playoffs, and whoever loses, might have to fight a little harder down the stretch. Another interesting note for this game is Tyler has the most points against in the league, whereas Levi has the least. So even though they have almost the same amount of points for, Levi's only lost 1 game, where Tyler's lost 3 of them, I think. Or he's lost 4. Oh,
Yeah.
for the guy. But, Tyler, he's got James White, who could go off against that Buffalo defense now that he's basically their main running back. He'll get AB back this week, who will be shadowed by Denzel Ward, so we don't know how that's exactly going to go. But then on the other side, Levi's got Michael Thomas against Minnesota, who maybe gets shadowed by Xavier Rhodes. I'm not sure if he's healthy right now. There's a lot of points that can be put up, but a lot of implications on what happens.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think this is all. Yeah, I agree with all of your takes. Interesting things for Tyler that you put up a lot of points this last week without AB, who will have back this week, but you will not have Julio Jones. So I'm just looking to see who he will start in his wide receiver. I guess he would start Willie Snead, who's been fine this season. I'd like to see James White have another big week against Buffalo this week. I guess he could have something. I guess he could choose between Snead and Callaway potentially, but maybe he starts both of them. I don't know. Yeah, lots of implications, and that is interesting. The most points against versus least points against.
Yeah, and one more interesting thing on that is I think if Tyler had played Levi every single week of the season, he would be 5-2 against him, even though Levi currently has a better record. So this is a chance for Tyler to show that even though Levi's doing better, he's got the better team.
Yeah, he would. I just looked it up. Yeah, he's outscored him the last 1, 2, 3, 4. He's outscored in the last 4 weeks in a row as well. Yeah. I'm just saying 4 of those wins would have all come from the last 4 weeks. So that's a pattern, folks. That's what we call a pattern.
This is Levi's chance to show that he's not just a team that doesn't have a lot of points scored against him, but a true contender in this league. Even though he already beat me,
Alrighty. As we mentioned earlier in Dylan's match, he retained the Tryhard Chalice. However, once again, is up for grabs because he is playing you this week in our Tryhard Chalice match.
I have to work harder. I want to excel. I want to be the greatest, so I'll keep on trying until I've got what it takes to do that.
What are you looking at from your side for this week?
All right, so this week, Melvin Gordon on bye. Doesn't ever look good for me because he's been an absolute stud this season. But Dylan also had Keenan Allen on bye, who hasn't been, as good as he was pumped up to be before the season. So we're both not exactly at full strength. But I think a lot of important things are going to happen in the Saints-Minnesota game and the Kansas City-Denver game. Because Dylan got Patrick Mahomes, whereas I have Kareem Hunt and Tyreek Hill. So I just got to hope that entire offense just funnels through their 2 best players. Maybe keep Patrick Mahomes just handing the ball off to Kareem Hunt all game. That would be perfect. And nothing scares me more right now than just looking at those Minnesota wide receivers playing New Orleans.
Yeah.
Just flashbacks to last year's playoffs. Anything could happen that Sunday night.
Yeah, very much so.
Who do you think could win this game, Frankie? Who's your
Who I
money on?
think? Oh man. Okay. I guess I feel like I don't know. I think this whole matchup might really depend on how Winston is able to perform for you. That could be a big deal. I mean, Denver defense has been pretty good this season, so I feel like Mahomes won't have too many issues producing. You have an interesting thing going on in your matchup that I have going on in mine. You have receivers for Dylan's starting quarterback, kind of like I have the quarterback for Greg's starting receivers. I have Andy Dalton for AJ, and then Tyler Boyd, and you have Tyreek and he has Mahomes. So that's interesting things because for the, we talked about way earlier in the season. Remember when you were playing Tyler, and you had Big Ben and he had Antonio Brown, and any touchdown he threw to Antonio Brown, it's only -2 versus -6. So that's something definitely to watch. Oh man, if I had to pick a winner this week, I am. Oh, okay. I like the Bears defense against the Jets. I don't super love George Kittle against the Arizona defense. Oh man, I think obviously it could definitely go either way. I think I'm going to side with you, Cam. I'm picking you to win the Try Hard Chalice.
Ha, Dylan. Frankie picked me. Frankie knows everything about fantasy. I'm winning. Suck it.
Yeah, I've never been wrong about fantasy ever once. Never. Definitely not wrong about fantasy every single week, multiple times a week.
It'll be definitely an interesting Sunday night football this week, though. I'm excited.
Yeah, for sure. Alrighty, that was Try Hard Chalice. Cam, did you have another matchup you want to talk about?
Dude, Frankie, funny you should ask, because I have my upset of the week.
I'm upset. Louder! I'm upset. Louder! I'm upset! Say it louder! I'm upset!
This week, I'm looking at JP's team with that depleted New England running game, forcing them to pass against the Buffalo awful defense. And Devin with that Eagles offense in London against Jacksonville, where they actually play pretty well most of the time. So I think JP could pull off this upset over Devin Distant. Yeah.
Yeah, I can definitely see this happening, which is unfortunate because I really like Devin to win this game for the sake of my division standings. But yeah, I like to see if Lamar Miller is the real deal or he's back, can produce against Miami this week.
Revenge game.
Yeah, that's true. It'll be interesting to look at. Tom Brady could definitely feast on that Buffalo defense, like you said. And we also mentioned a little bit earlier, but that Jacksonville defense has been slumping recently. We'll see what Carson Wentz can do with the passing game there. But yeah, it is a home game for Jacksonville in London, so we will see about that. Just for my own sake, I'm going to say I disagree with you and that Devin will win. But in the back of my mind and in my heart, I know this very well could be another JP win, which means I really need to beat Greg this week. Oh boy.
Well, if you're going to beat any team, Greg's one to do it against.
Yeah, that's true. Alrighty, so those are our matchups of the week we're going to be highlighting. And we're going to get into our mailbag now. I have one question from Alex McKnight.
What?
He writes in.
Oh,
I know, right? Former owner, retired owner from the Anyone But Cam Fantasy League. Alex McKnight writes in, and he writes, "You're pitted in a fight to the death against another opponent. You get to pick of an aluminum baseball bat, or a 6-inch non-serrated knife as your weapon, but the other person gets whichever one you didn't pick. What do you choose? What do you choose, and why?"
Do I pick which league member I'm fighting as well?
Let's say you're fighting Dylan because you're going up against him this week.
Ooh, that's big implications there.
Yeah.
I'd say I'd go with the baseball bat for the reach. You know what I'm saying? Just how's he gonna stab me if I'm just jabbing him all the time?
That was my takeaway as well. My take as well. You can't 6-inch non-serrated knife. That's tiny. A baseball bat? You kidding me? Give me the baseball bat.
Mm-hmm. Dylan can't throw a knife that well to, get in there.
Yeah. So thanks for the non-fantasy question, Alex. Great. Love it.
It's better than anyone else's questions. God.
Yeah, no one else submitted a question this week, so that's why we added that one in. But yeah, you can always submit questions to anyoneButCam@gmail.com, or you could just message one of us if you're too lazy to do that. Whatever. Anyways, thank you all once again for listening to another episode of the Anyone But Cam Fantasy Football Podcast. I've been Frankie.
And this is Cam.
good luck to everyone in your matchup this week, besides for Greg.
Dylan, it'll be a fun time. It'll be a dark time. And at the end, I will be standing over your dead corpse with your vape pen jabbed in your eyeball.
Join us next week for a Halloween-themed edition of the podcast. Hope you guys all have a good weekend, and we'll see you later.
Keep it spooky.